Good morning and welcome to the annual meeting of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes Fire Authority. That's the City of Milton Keynes Fire Authority. My name is David Hopkins. I am the Vice Chairman of the authority. Although members of the public are able to attend and observe in person, we are continuing to record these meetings. Following the meeting, a video recording will be uploaded to the authority's YouTube channel. Some of our officers are joining us remotely via Microsoft Teams. In order to facilitate the best possible experience for all those participating in the meeting, and for those who may want to watch the recording of the meeting, can I please ask that participating in the meeting remotely to switch off your microphone and camera when you're not speaking. If remote participants wish to speak during the meeting, please turn on your camera to indicate a wish to respond to a question or to make a comment. The first item of business is the election of chairman. I will now ask Graham Britton to ask for nominations for chairman for 2022-23.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Are there any nominations for the position of chairman for the year 22-23?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Simon Rouse.
Is there a seconder for that?
I would welcome the opportunity to second that.
Are there any other nominations? But there being no other nominations, I can confirm that Councillor Rouse is duly elected as chairman.
So we know the makeup of the fire authority. I think it is really important that we start having a discussion about the chair occasionally being from Milton Keynes and not always from that. And I think that will provide some balance as we go forward. I think it's really important that we think about the proper sharing of responsibility across Buckinghamshire and the City of Milton Keynes.
I think we can ask for that to be put in this, Councillor.
Thank you.
The chairman and I will now swap seats.
I support that.
Yeah.
Short process, yeah.
Yeah, I'll call.
Chairman, congratulations.
You need to record that.
Thank you, and thank you for electing me as chairman. We're going to move to the second item, which is the appointment of the vice chairman. So I'll ask Graham Britton for any call for nominations.
Thank you, Chairman. Are there any nominations for the position of vice chairman for the year 2023?
I'd like to nominate Councillor David Hopkins.
Is there a seconder for that nomination?
I'll second that nomination. Brilliant. Thank you.
Are there any other nominations for the position of vice chairman? There being no other nominations, I can confirm that Councillor Hopkins is duly elected as vice chairman.
Thank you. Next item is apologies for absence. Oh, sorry. Councillor Martin.
One little point. I noticed the suffix of man on both chairman and vice chairman, and obviously from the point of view is very likely to come from one group at the moment. Man is a very clear suffix because I know Councillor Dollington is the only female on the final authority. I think that is a big miss.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Lambert.
Chairman, following on from that, there's a logical thought process is that many years ago we stopped calling firefighters fire men, and I think that should apply also to the members of the authority as well. They are members and not member men, not chairman, and so forth. So I think that would be an appropriate change, actually, in line with how we expect our firefighters to be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Noted. For the record, I want to be called a chairman. Councillor Statutory.
Just can we put that on the next agenda to discuss and agree it? Because we haven't got it on. It's not an agenda item. As your please ask you to put it on the next agenda to formally.
We'll certainly consider it for the next agenda item. For the next agenda. Any other comments on that before we move on to apologies for absence? Any apologies for absence?
Just one, Councillor Irwin.
Thank you very much. So we next move on to the minutes of the last meeting of the Fire Authority, which was held on the 16th of February 2022. Are there any issues of accuracy that members wish to raise? Councillor Lambert.
Thank you, Chair, the page 23, which is FA 40 item, is the last line in the resolution, which says the chairman advised that members of the Conservative Group will not be choosing to forego the 1.5% increase. 1.5% increase. For accuracy, it should be that is £60.45p for the year, £665 in total. But as a question of accuracy, Chair, that can we have advice on whether that applies to the members of the authority as was then, or new incoming members to the authority? And would they have to have another vote or change or make a different decision about whether they accepted their £60.45 over the coming year?
So I think we're going to cover that in matters arising.
Okay.
But I can confirm that the Conservative Group in its entirety, both new and previous members, are all foregoing the increase. If that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Right, any other questions of accuracy on the minutes? Are members happy for me to sign the minutes as a chair? Thank you. Next we move to matters arising from previous meeting. Are there any matters arising?
Thank you, Chairman. There's a couple of matters that I would like to draw members' attention to. First, in respect of minute FA 37, that was in response to an ongoing concern that members of the part of, particularly led by the Vice Chairman, about vetting of firefighters. So I can confirm that on the 31st of May, the Chief Fire Officer and I received an email from the NFCC, which is the National Fire Chiefs Council, strategic lead for safeguarding, stating that she had received formal notification from the Home Office that the Fire Minister, having considered the business case, which is mentioned in the minutes, that he is minded to endorse to the Ministry of Justice changes to the exception order to include Fire Rescue Authority employees. However, say is that the indications are that this DBS checking national DBS checking rather than the enhanced DBS checking, which is taking at this authority and which was requested by the group leaders in their letters to the Minister and to the NFCC chairman.
Any questions from members on that?
I would just say as comment, Chair, if I may, I think that we continue to show best practice in this, and we should be pleased and proud that we do.
Chairman, just in addition to that, I subsequently received an email from the National Fire Chiefs Council for an invitation from myself to sit on the National Safeguarding Board, Fire and Rescue Services, moving forward. That'll be a monthly meeting, and in that meeting I'll be pushing the position of this authority in terms of enhanced DBS checks for all fire and rescue services across the country.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other matters?
Thank you, Chairman. The next one is slightly prompted by the Councillor's question, but I was going to report that minute FA 40C, in terms of members of the House, I was going to confirm that notification has been received from the Conservative Group members to forego the 1.5% element of their allowances.
Thank you. Any questions from members on that? Okay, thank you. Moving on to disclosure of interests. Are there any interests that members would like to disclose? Seeing none. Just to for members noting, you will receive shortly from officers the new declaration of interest that you're required to complete within 28 days of this meeting. So if you can keep your eye out for that, make sure you complete it, please. So next we move on to item 7, which is Chairman's announcements. I'd just like to start by saying, firstly, how honoured and privileged I am to become Chairman of the Fire Authority. We've got some significant challenges over the next 12 months, and I'm very much looking forward to, as an authority, us working collectively to address those and really focusing on the issues that really matter to ensure we put the best fire and rescue service in Buckinghamshire and the city of Milton Keynes that we can, and very much looking forward to working with all of you on that. I also just wanted to pay tribute to Councillor Leslie Clark, who had been previous chairman of the authority, and I think, as members will know, stewed it through a particularly challenging time with COVID. And I know that the service did a fitting tribute to Leslie yesterday, and I just wanted to put on record my thanks for the very professional and quality handover that Councillor Clark has given me in the role. So on behalf of the authority, we'd like to register our thanks. I also wanted to thank the lead members, members who've been in lead member roles for the last 12 months. I know a huge amount of work, I probably see a huge amount of work was done. I'd particularly like to thank Councillor Lambert for his hard work on the equality, diversity and inclusion work, which we're obviously going to come to later on today. So thank you to all of those members. And it clearly would be right of me to congratulate the members from Milton Keynes on achieving its city status, I think since the last authority met. And I'll do my very best to keep remembering to refer to you as a city throughout my time as chairman.
And I shall do my very best to keep reminding you.
Thank you. Good. You'll note that the chairman's announcements were tabled in advance on your table. I'm not intending to read them out, but are there any questions or issues arising from them? Councillor Martin.
Two, which is sort of two information. Obviously, on whole-time firefighters, I know that a number of the whole-time firefighters come from the on-call firefighters. We already have an issue with on-call firefighters. So I suppose the question is, what more can be done to recruit more on-call firefighters? On-call firefighters are just going to step up with whole-time firefighters. And I know 3rd of October, does that apply to people who are on-call firefighters? And why does it take so long for someone starting? Because that would be over 6 months from sort of recruitment to start. That seems a long reading time.
Okay, thank you. Anne, would you answer?
Sorry, can I reply? So Anne Stanell, Head of Human Resources. So in terms of the whole-time firefighters, I'll take the first point in terms of the on-call. So we are continuing to recruit on-call. We have 2 intakes of on-call throughout the year. Certainly my team, the on-call managers and Marcoms are working on the recruitment campaigns at the minute. We're looking to recruit in a slightly different way in terms of building personas. So there's a lot of work that's been going on that. So just please be assured that although we are recruiting whole-time firefighters, we're looking at transferees, we are continuing the work on the on-call firefighters. We have, I think, on the communication there as well, there's 6 that are going forward to be on-call firefighters. They're starting on the 31st of August. So that's on the first point, and on the second point, the whole-time firefighters, we're due to start the interviews for whole-time firefighters on 22nd of June. They go through to the 1st of July. We have 43 people that are due to be interviewed. The course is set for the 3rd of October, so they join us on the 3rd of October, but they start like a week later. So they start for an induction on the 3rd of October, and then the 10th of October they start their course. There's a couple of reasons for this. So the first one is obviously that we need to get the course with the Fire Service College. We need to get all of our personnel kind of lined up and ready. And the second part is that once they've gone through interview, we need to obviously look at who's been successful medicals and the DBS checks. So to date, they've been through all the role-related testing, the bleep tests, the behavioural workshops, all of those kind of things. It takes a good 6 months from starting all the way through, and that's not taken into consideration kind of engagement. So basically, they go through the medicals and the DBS, and then obviously they've got to give a month's notice. We put a month's notice because we assume that most people are going to have to give that. So hence why the 3rd of October is the date that we're looking for. Does that answer all the points, questions? Or any other?
It does answer the question. I just wonder if in the future, when we go through this process, there might be some thinking we can look at to shorten the process. 6 months is a very long time, I think. And so shortening that process would be probably good for everybody if possible.
Yeah, no, so I will come to the second, Councillor Secretary. I think we all agree that the recruitment of firefighters is the single biggest challenge that we've got, and I'm really keen that as an authority we work together to help support us to do that. I think process improvements and things we can do are really welcome. Councillor Statutory.
Just for you, Chair, can we get a note to the amount of firefighters we've got, the ones we're recruiting against the ones we're losing, and we did discuss in the last authority the problem with retention, and I think having a statement about training is positive, but that is we can't judge it. It's a note here. It should have had all the other details in it so that you can compare it in comparison and actually see whether we're moving forward or we're standing still or we're improving. And we can't make that out from this. All we can know is that you recruit people, which is positive. But we do need that detail, then we can discuss it in totality.
So Councillor Statutory, just to put it into context, this is a Chair's announcement and an update. There is in the strategic plan that we'll cover later it's a specific area that's covered. And I think you're right that visibility to the progress is something we need to make sure we've got. But to put it into context, this is just a chairman's update. Councillor Bagg.
Thank you, Chairman. In relation to cohort 6 of operational apprentices, I attended the passing out day on the 20th of May, and I just wanted to say that I was very impressed with the way that the day was organised and the way it showcased the effectiveness and competence of the service. The demonstration of firefighting was, albeit whilst it's staged and rehearsed, it demonstrated the capability of the new firefighters. It's really fascinating to have an insight into a vertical slice of the organisation, seeing the levels of command in operation and seeing the pride, commitment and motivation of firefighters at all levels. I think it's a very, very impressive demonstration of the capability of the service. So thank you to the officers for that.
Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing that I think might be helpful? Sorry. So just in regards to the recruitment that we're currently undertaking for full-time transferees, we had a meeting with the recruitment oversight board, so that was in April. So basically, we sat down and we looked at our strategic intent in regards to recruitment, and we have a workforce planning group with stakeholders from across the service who are working on all of these areas, the process improvement, how we can better work together, the adverts. There's people from finance, communications, all of these people. So we agreed the terms of reference. Not the last business transformation board, as we've been going through and looking at our governance. So there is a lot of work that's in the background. In terms of the 6 months, you know, it does sound a very long time, but there is a lot that needs to go through there. It is something that we're working on all the time to improve, but we are really mindful that we're trying to engage with the community as well and factor that in. So there's lots that we're kind of doing on that one. The establishment is also, there's been meetings about the establishment and how many firefighters we're looking to, whole-time firefighters, the transferees and all of those, to make sure that, you know, we're all aligned.
Thank you. Enter agenda item 8, petitions. Have you received any petitions?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item number 9, questions. Have you received any questions?
None, Chairman.
So move next on to item number 10, which is membership of the authority. Mr. Britton, would you like to?
That's good. Good noting, Chairman.
Thank you. Members are happy to note this item. Very good. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 11, which is committee matters. So the recommendations here are for us to note, but if I can ask Mr. Britton to just read through the nominations that you've received from group leaders.
Yes, first, thank you, Chairman. First, in terms of the proportionality split, again, I'd like to thank the group leaders of the Democrats and Labour for agreeing the split between the two committees, because as with last year, it was tight. So they were agreeing to the proportionality split. I set out in part A of 11. Now, in terms of agenda item 10B, that's the nominations of the actual individuals onto those seats. I can confirm that the Conservative group appointments to its 5 seats on the Executive Committee are Councillors Hall, Hopkins, McLean, Rouse and Walsh. Conversely, to the Overview and Audit Committee, it's Councillors Bagg, Carroll, Chapel, OBE, Hussain, Irwin and Waite. The Liberal Democrats appointments to its 2 seats on the Executive Committee are Councillors Christensen and Lambert, and onto its 1 seat on the Overview and Audit Committee, Councillor Exon. The Labour Group appointment to its 1 seat on the Executive Committee is Councillor Marland, and on his 2 seats on the Overview and Audit Committee are Councillors Darlington and Stutchbury.
Thank you. Members happy to note that item. Thank you. Next, we move on to agenda item 12, which is the calendar of meetings, which is again for noting. I will just draw your attention, and do correct me if I get this wrong, but the Fire Authority meeting on the 12th of October will be held at the Oculus in Aylesbury. Similarly, the 7th of December, we are seeking to do the 15th of February in the city of Milton Keynes, and the 14th of June will be at the Oculus. Just for members noting.
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 13, which is representatives, appointment of representatives to outside bodies. Mr. Britton, would you like to run through any nominations?
Thank you, Chairman. I've received the following nominations for the following appointments, and once these have been read out and moved and seconded, I will then ask if there are any other nominations. So taking them in the order there, 13A to D, the nominations so far received are as follows: to the Local Government Association Annual Conference, Councillors Hopkins and Bagg; to the LGA Fire Commission, Councillors Rouse and Councillor Hopkins as a standing deputy; to the LGA Annual Fire Conference, Councillors Rouse and Hopkins; and onto the Thames Valley Fire Control Joint Committee, Councillors Rouse and Walsh, and the two substitute members, Councillors Hall and McLean. If those could be moved and seconded, I'll propose them.
40 seconds.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for those appointments?
No? Okay, thank you. So moving on to item number 14, which is lead member responsibilities. Just do a quick outline for.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. The first part of this item, members, is to consider the allocations of lead members' responsibility. These are currently set out at pages 8 and 9 of your agenda packs, and they are currently as follows: service delivery, protection and collaboration; people, equality, diversity and assurance; finance and assets, information, IT, climate change; and health and safety and corporate risk. So they are the current allocations for the authority to consider.
Thank you. I'd like to move an amendment, please, to move the climate change element that's currently in the finance and assets portfolio to sit in the responsibilities of the Vice Chairman.
Happy to second that.
Seconded. That being proposed and seconded,
Councillor Marland.
For clarification, is that going to be a portfolio holder and lead member, or is it?
No, let me, sorry, yes, I should have clarified before I moved the amendment. So very keen that we put a specific focus on climate change. And I think sitting within that portfolio, it wasn't, it's a big portfolio to be sitting in. The proposal isn't that the Vice Chairman role becomes a lead member role. It isn't going to attract any additional allowances. It's just to, and I'll be proposing a further amendment in a minute just to outline more detail on the Vice Chairman role. But it's to put it into the responsibility of the Vice Chairman to give it the focus that it rightly deserves. So to be clear, there's not a new lead member being created, and there's no new allowances being created either. Councillor Statutory.
Yeah, thank you for that, and you're going to give more clarity. But does this mean it's going to have a more prevalent role? It's going to be more, means there'll be more stuff going forward, as long as it's not a regular role. So that's what the intention is, to make it more upfront and personal. But we did have some discussions in the previous council local authority about it, and they were quite tacit at times about auditing our ability to audit in ourselves on environment. And that was truly strongly insisted. I think if it's a move to actually move forward to be more collated and prosperous on the environment, I think it'd be a good move, and we'll watch with interest.
Good. Well, thank you, Councillor Statutory. So I think when I said that it was to give it the focus that it deserved, I was rightly indicating that I wanted to have focus. And we certainly will discuss it. Whether we always agree on solutions and the approach, I think will remain to be seen, but that's the proposal. Any other questions on that before we move to the vote on the amendment? Are members happy to vote? Those in favour of the amendment? And against?
Yeah.
The amendment is to move the climate change element within the finance and assets portfolio to the Vice Chairman, to the responsibility of the Vice Chairman. Sorry?
I'm not sure it needs an amendment.
Well, the advice that.
Tell me your recommendations.
So the advice that I received is it needs an amendment to remove Councillor Marden, which is why we're doing it. Wouldn't do amendments unless they were necessary. So I think that was carried in any event. So thank you.
Okay, Chairman.
Can I then propose a further amendment, which is to articulate more clearly the Vice Chairman role, which is as follows. I'd like to propose that we note that the Vice Chairman's role is to support the Chairman of the Authority in the discharge of their responsibilities, to deputise for the Chairman of the Authority where necessary. Thirdly, to lead on the Authority response to any government proposals relevant to the responsibilities of the authority and any transitions or changes arising from those proposals. Fourthly, to lead on the authority response to any matters relating to HMI CFRS and to lead the authority's response to climate change as per the previous amendment. The reason for this is that there isn't a documented and clear outline of the Vice Chairman's responsibilities. We want to set that out more clearly, particularly given the challenge coming down the track with the white paper and others. We wanted to make sure there was a clear focus on it. To clarify yet again, just for the avoidance of doubt, this isn't a new lead member role. It's not attracting additional allowances, but it's just to make those responsibilities clear. I suppose I can have a seconder for that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry, just taking the seconder. Councillor Darlington.
I'm really confused at the moment. So what would the role of the chair be?
Right, so there is no difference to the fact that a number of areas of the responsibility of the authority sit with lead members. The chairman's role is to oversee all of those things, including the things that sit in the vice chairman's role. But in the same way that we've articulated responsibilities for the lead member, we're putting in place clearer responsibilities for the vice chair. That's the purpose. Councillor Martin.
You have not actually answered the question.
I believe I did. Councillor Martin.
What are we amending?
We're not amending anything. We are putting in place. Well, okay.
So what are you?
It's an amendment to item 14. Councillor Martin. It's an amendment to item 14, which currently.
Chair, I'm asking a question and I haven't finished.
Right.
What are you amending? There's nothing to amend. Are you adding a note to a minute? Are you seeking to amend the constitution? Because as far as I think, the vice chair is defined within the constitution as the combined authority. And if you're moving an amendment to the constitution to define the role of vice chair, that's absolutely fine. But I would like some advice on whether that would have to sit on the table as an amendment until the next meeting to come back, as constitutions often say it should, or process amendment to a constitution, or whether it's okay to amend the constitution with no notice in the meeting on an item that isn't a constitutional amendment item.
Have you finished, Councillor Martin?
Yeah.
Right, so in a minute I'll turn to Mr. Britton, who will outline that for you. Just so we're clear, so we have a successful 12 months ahead of us. I'm very keen that in this meeting we have a debate on matters of real substance and put sufficient time on it. There has to be order in this meeting, that when I speak, it's me that's speaking, and I won't tolerate being interrupted. So just set those standards now. We'll have a very successful 12 months ahead of us. Mr. Britton.
I hope that this will cover all the points in the councillor's question. I mean, constitutionally, neither the role of the chairman or the vice chairman is set out at all. So it's not an amendment to the constitution. The chairman is a requirement of the statutory instrument that constitutes the authority of the vice chairman is an optional addition at the discretion of the authority. This item fell under lead member responsibilities, where under each item there was a decision to consider. The first part is to consider the lead member responsibilities, and the chairman felt that climate change should come out of the existing description below each of those lead member responsibilities and put it under the responsibility of the vice chairman. The other amendment is the movement of the focus on the HMI CFRS inspection. The other aspect was to particularise other aspects of the vice chairman's role, which we can take outside of the meeting, but the key amendments to the lead responsibility were twofold. One is the climate change and the HMI CFRS focus, and I think we can minute the formal role of the vice chairman. We can do that through the minutes, but okay. The amendment is on the climate change and the movement of the HMI CFRS inspection.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you, Chairman. 2 points. One is the merits of these changes aside, it would have been helpful to have been given some advance notice of them so we had a chance to digest them before we came today. And springing them on us today, as you have, I'm not sure it's appropriate. Secondly, I've been a member of this authority since early 2019. In that time, I've never heard the chairman address any member in the way he just did. And I don't think it's appropriate. It's not appropriate to the way this organisation conducts itself.
Councillor Christensen, on the first point, I think that's a fair point, and we'll make sure that in future things are advised in that way. We'll take it as a minute now rather than as an amendment, as Graham said. On the second point, noted, I hold a different view, but that's fine. Your view's noted. Councillor Stutchbury.
Yeah, in the spirit of cooperation, and good heart and whatever. Yeah, I understand the rationale for the amendment, but the in good order and good manners, it would be awfully good if we'd had a note so that I could have read it before I come to the meeting. Because the reason we're having questions, not because we necessarily disagree with the direction of travel, it's because we didn't know the direction of travel before we arrived at the meeting. And in the spirit of cooperation, and now we need to work together, it would be good in future if the chairman wishes to present an amendment, that we have it in writing, at least to the group leaders with the various groups to discuss it, so that they can inform their members of the rationale behind it. Then it wouldn't get into a debate about stopping people speaking or doing whatever, because it would be an orderly debate. So my heartfelt thoughts are that in future, please send a note, because I will talk and I will ask questions, and if you give plenty of opportunity, plenty of questions will be asked.
So Councillor Stutchbury, my heartfelt response back is, as per my response to Councillor Christensen, I totally accept that we should have advised it in advance. I've apologised for that. I apologise for it now, and I agree we'll do that in future. Councillor Darlington.
It would be useful also to understand in writing what then the chair's role is, as opposed to the vice chair. I think what you're proposing is the vice chair would no longer have oversee the budget responsibility. Is that what you're saying? Because I mean, I have to say, if that's the case, I mean, even though Councillor Hopkins and I are on separate sides of it, his understanding of the budget and what he's done to help steer us through these years, we would be losing an enormous and valuable resource if that was to happen.
So Councillor Darlington, just to clarify, we've not yet moved on to the nominations for lead members, which is what we'll do next. That will then outline who is going to take the responsibility for the finance and assets portfolio, which is the budget role that you've talked about. So to be clear, that's the next stage. We'll be covering that in a second. To be clear, we're not losing any knowledge or experience from Councillor Hopkins, because as Vice Chairman, he'll be sitting on the Executive Committee, he'll be participating in a number of key issues, and so that was certainly not the case. Shall we move on to the appointment, to each of the lead member roles?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, as you indicate, the second part of this item is to appoint members into those four lead member roles, and it's the amended roles as we just covered in the previous item. So I'm taking those in turn. Are there any nominations for Executive Committee members for the position of lead member for service delivery, protection and collaboration? Councillor Wells? Is there a second? Okay. Are there any other nominations for the lead member of that lead member position?
Any other nominations?
No. That lead member position is duly appointed into. The second lead member role is people, quality, diversity and assurance. Are there any nominations for that lead member role?
I'd like to propose Councillor Gary Hall.
Can I have a seconder? Are there any other nominations?
Any other nominations? No.
Can I just make the point?
No, not
No,
a minute.
I can't. Okay, fine.
Any other nominations?
Councillor Gary Hall is appointed into that lead member position. The next one is the amended role of lead member for finance and assets, information security and IT. Can I have a?
Yes, I'd like to propose Councillor Matthew Walsh.
Can I have a seconder? I'm happy to second. Are there any other nominations to that position? It must be from the Executive Committee.
Councillor Stutchbury needs to be from the Executive Committee.
Clarity.
Sorry, Councillor Stutchbury.
Before I make a point, it's a point of clarity.
Sorry, sorry, Councillor Stutchbury, is it a point of order or a point of clarity? If it's a point of clarity, we'll proceed through the business. No, Councillor Stutchbury. We'll proceed through the business, and then we'll come to both Councillor Darlington and to you. But at the minute, we are doing nominations for the lead member roles. It's a point of order. I'm really happy to take a point of order.
No, I'm just going
right. Then it's not. We'll carry on. So,
I was
sorry, I
going
lost
to suggest
Councillor
another-
Stutchbury. Thank you.
I was asking for any other nominations.
Any other nominations for
For the
finance
finance
matters?
Councillor Walsh is appointed into that lead member role. The final lead member role is for health and safety and corporate risks.
I'd like to propose Councillor Keith McLean.
Second. Any other nominations?
Councillor Stutchbury.
I like to vote yes.
Sorry, you turned away.
Okay, well, I'll wait.
So no other nominations.
Councillor McLean is appointed into that lead member.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Darlington first, raise their hand.
Yeah, so I would just like to be on the record that actually we've appointed somebody to people with quality, diversity and assurance. In fact, we just appointed 4 white men of a certain age. And actually, particularly in people of quality, diversity and assurance, we have taken a huge step back as an authority in doing so. We made huge progress under the previous chair in terms of making sure that everybody's voices were respected in this room. And I am quite concerned that we're taking a huge step back today.
Nice, thank you. Councillor Stutchbury.
I echo those concerns. It's the first meeting and you've got to settle into the role. But the role should be about, let's make it about the meeting. The last person who represented did it in that role, diversity, did a very good job as Councillor Steve. And he worked extremely hard in that. I was going to, when I didn't have a chance to, propose that he carried on in that role. Because the amount of work he put into it was endless. The quality of his report was tremendous, and I felt that he'd earned the trust of us all to represent diversity very well. And I've known Stephen for very many years, worked with him, disagreed with him, and all sorts. And I've always came out of it feeling that he's a fair and balanced man. So I didn't have the opportunity to propose him for the role, which I think was a miss because we got involved in or whatever. But that has gone now. But I think we should learn by this. And I fear, though I do respect other people to have opportunities, I feel we've lost a quality there which I had deep respect for.
So thank you, Councillor Stutchbury. Just for clarity, for your point of clarity, we were inviting nominations. You didn't say that you were proposing Councillor Lambert in that moment, and I gave you a number of opportunities to outline what you wanted to do. So to be clear, you weren't prevented from proposing anybody. Secondly, in my chairman announcement, I very explicitly thanked Councillor Lambert for his work. And you're quite right, change will happen in organisations, and change has happened in this role. So thank you. I think we are now moving on to item number 15, which is, sorry if I missed on it.
No, that's correct, John.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Marland.
Just for clarity, although Councillor Hopkins is not a lead member, he has responsibility. When a paper comes to the authority or the executive on those areas, will Councillor Hopkins be responsible for those areas? Or will it be a lead member, or Councillor Hopkins is responsible for those areas? And if so, if Councillor Hopkins is responsible for them, but not a lead member, why isn't he a lead member? Because obviously the constitution defines, if it's a matter of allowances, what about the critical impact of allowances, then Councillor Hopkins could agree to forego the allowance. I just find it odd that Councillor Hopkins is being given an effective lead member role, or not being given the title lead member, or deputy chair and lead member, and that's absolutely fine. And it's just that point of clarity over those areas under Councillor Hopkins. Does he have effective lead member responsibility for them?
So it's not about allowances, but I want to be clear about allowances so there wasn't confusion. It was a proposal to set out more clearly the responsibilities that sit with the vice chairman. On the point that you're raising, yes, under those areas it would be Councillor Hopkins. What I will commit to do to move this on is we will set out to members how that will work, and I will consider whether or not a lead member designation might be a clearer way of doing it. So I'll take on board those comments, and we'll take that away, and I'll come back to you. So thank you for that. So we'll move on now to item 15, which is the corporate plan. Moving on to the more substantive items of the day, this is a review of progress made over the second year of the 5-year corporate plan. So this plan was approved by the authority at its annual meeting in June 2020. Progress was both during the first year and year 2 refresh was approved at last year's annual meeting. In light of that progress, officers are taking the opportunity to refresh the programme of activities over the remaining 3 years in pursuit of the strategic objectives that were agreed. Given we face a still uncertain outlook, I know that officers are keeping the plan under active review to enable us to respond to changes to our strategic context and report back to us as often as we ask them to. I'm now going to hand over to Corporate Planning Manager Stuart, who's going to give us a brief overview of the progress report and the updated corporate plan before I ask members for any questions or issues they want to raise. Stuart.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. As the Chairman just indicated, this item is structured in 2 parts, which is reflected in the paper before you. I will deal first with Appendix 2, which is at pages 49 to 61 of your papers. As you can see, for each item of the refreshed plan that was approved last year, we've provided a report which shows what has been completed during the second year of the plan, and then a status report for the remaining items using the RAG system, the key to which is at page 49. Of the 22 projects and work streams set out in the plan, 3 have now been completed and are now embedded in ongoing business as usual. 2 of these relate to the pursuit of our protection strategic objective, which is set out at page 50 to 51, and the other to our best value objective, pages 55 to 56. None are at red rag status, which is good news, because if there were any, that would mean that they were irrecoverably off track. 7 are at amber, which means that they are somewhat behind where we would like them to be at this point, but nonetheless recoverable. As you will have seen, in some instances, this was due to the impact of COVID on our ability to resource and or otherwise progress them. 10 are at green, which means that they are broadly where we plan them to be at this point. Finally, there are 2 without rag status marked NA, as they were not due to start during the second year of the plan. These are quite important items, but they relate to the preparation of our next public safety plan, which we're currently envisaging will cover the period 2025 to 2030, and that's at page 55. If I may now turn your attention to Appendix 1, which contains the updated programme of activities that will be progressed over the remaining 3 years of the plan. This is set out at page 33 to 48 of your papers. There you will see the period over which we plan to progress each project or work stream, and also who is responsible for driving each aspect of the programme forward at senior management team level and who's leading delivery on the groundwork. Please also note the inclusion of 2 new items relating to the protection objective, pages 41 and 42, replacing those that were completed during year 2 of the plan as reported at Appendix 2. The document has also been updated to reflect the latest financial projections that were reported to the Fire Authority in February. There is a summary of that at page 37. The rest of the document is pretty much the same as reported to the authority last June. Finally, in his introduction, the Chairman mentioned the need to keep the plan under active review, given the uncertainties associated with our future outlook. You will have seen at pages 46 to 47 a range of risks that could potentially impede progress with delivery of the plan or otherwise knock us off course. Also, there are potential implications for us arising from the government's proposals set out in the Home Office consultation document, which is on the agenda at item 17, to which we may need to respond depending on the outcome of the consultation and the government's response to. In the meantime, thank you very much for your attention, and I will hand back to the Chairman for any questions or comments.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from members? Councillor Statutory.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In the spirit of the meeting, I'd like to propose an amendment to the corporate plan. I'd like to amend the corporate plan to include the environment, taking on board the wide move to give responsibility to the deputy. I think it's fitting that we bring it into the corporate plan now, and the environment is never going to be more important. And I propose an amendment to the corporate plan that's included in the corporate plan in future, so that it communicates with the same seriousness of other matters, because it has a large impact on the environment, has an impact on our future planning for economics of the authority. It also has a large precedent in recent years of necessity to actually be bringing forward. So I hope that will be taken into the bill that it's offered, and we propose that we vote on that so that we can see whether we're really going to match the early signs of enthusiasm to be more proactive on the environment.
Thank you. Do you want to respond?
The only thing I would say in relation to that is obviously the environment does feature in our public safety plan, and obviously there are elements here around kind of civil contingencies which do in the broad address that. Also, we do have a specific climate change environment action plan which was presented to members and approved at a recent meeting. I think Mark actually probably is a bit loud on that, so you delivered it.
Yeah, I think that's a positive suggestion, actually. I think Stuart's alluded to the Environment and Climate Action Plan. Within that, there are a number of activities over the next 4 or 5 years which we focus on. I think if we incorporate those into this corporate plan, would be a good way of putting that focus on that, as you say, is really important. So I think that's a positive suggestion.
So for clarity, so I don't misunderstand, what we're saying is that those elements which have been discussed by the officer with good diction are going to be included in this corporate plan.
So I'll summarise what I think I heard. If that's
Yeah,
right.
that's what I'm
that's
trying
fine.
to-
You put your hand up. So you put your hand up. So I wanted to make sure I was polite and let you speak. So I think what I heard officer say, which actually I would be supportive of, is that they integrate references to existing plans on the Environment Action Plan and the Public Safety Plan that cover those areas to add to the strategic plan. What I suggest we do, if you're content with this, is we invite officers to do that, and then we will ask to review what that looks like in the strategic plan at the next meeting. So we give them a chance to integrate it. I've got a number of members, so I will come to you in order that I had them. I had Councillor Christensen next.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on page 46 to the risk management plan, I know we do have unexpected financial pressures, but inflation isn't specifically in there. Just wondering, should it be, bearing in mind we're knocking on double-digit inflation? And the second part of my question, I guess, is we spoke at a previous meeting about trying to identify the authority's individual rate of inflation to guide us more accurately. I was wondering if you'd had a chance to make any progress on that.
Okay, no, thank you. That's a good question. We haven't included it specifically because there's so many elements. We just said general pressures, obviously, kind of given the context where we are now. Inflation is a big one. In terms of the individual inflation rate for the authority, I haven't done that yet. What I've been working on at the moment is, members may be aware, I sit on the NFCC Finance Committee. So we've designed a survey for the whole sector, because obviously we want to make the case for the sector as a whole of what our pressure is going to be for when we go for a local government finance assessment. We want to get the best assessment possible. As part of that, we will be working out what our inflation rate is for Bucksfire before we aggregate it up. So I'll be able to present that back at the next meeting.
Just to add to that, we'll also be having a corporate risk register, which is reviewed at every overview and audit committee meeting, and actually that in the finance related risk does cover the issue of inflation, so it's captured there because obviously it's a very dynamic position at the moment.
I just see it as particularly a risk for us not being able to deliver on our corporate plan.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Marland.
Yeah, it would have been helpful to have a document with like track changes on it. So the question is, obviously we are 2-3 years into this corporate plan, but in the middle of the corporate plan, we've had the HMI EFRS inspection. I suppose it's highlighting what's changed in the corporate plan in response to that inspection. It would be quite helpful to have had those amendments sort of clearly set out, considering the emphasis that you put on it with the deputy chair.
Did you want to?
Yeah. In fact, what I would say with that one, I think it's a fair observation. I'd be quite happy to work on that alongside when we're doing the work to integrate in the point about the climate change and environment. So we'll see if we can do something just to make that a bit clearer.
Great.
How relevant is the council plan that we had 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, in light of those inspectorate recommendations, and how much does it need to change? And I suppose you're going to have to set out when those likely changes are coming back, and whether that's going to entail a new plan, or whether it's an amendment to the current plan.
Yeah. So I think it's a fair point. So the plan as it's been refreshed is trying to weave in responses to the issues from the HMI report. I think what we should make sure we do is draw those out much more clearly. I think it, alongside the work on the environment element, if we bring that back to the next meeting, then we can make a judgment about whether or not we want to start the process of looking at the next corporate plan, or whether we want to amend the plan further. So if you're content, if members are content, let's set out the next meeting to revisit this in a bit more detail with those changes so we can understand.
Absolutely. Just one other observation. We do have a detailed action plan for the HMIC FRS recommendations. The more strategic kind of stuff is in here. And a lot of what's in that plan is kind of more like continuous improvement. It's not necessarily big projects, but nonetheless, the point is well made and taken on board. Thank you.
Councillor.
Just to give the assurance to my colleagues across the room here that I will undertake in the next couple of weeks, subject to availability for Stuart and for Mark and for Jason, to sit down and work through the various plans to start to fully amend the corporate plan in line with our ever-changing pressures and directives. I think that's the role that I want to take on now, or how I see that role being interpreted.
Thank you. Just in the absence of other members, two points from me, if I may. So first, thank you for the report. Clearly, a lot of work gone into it. The first question is could you just draw for the benefit of members our attention to the action that you've got most concern about progress? Because clearly what we've got is a green and amber report. Just be good to know which action you think we need to be most alive to the risk of turning red. And the second point, and actually this is a point I'll make on the next agenda item as well, where on page 7 we have the objectives, measures and enablers. One of the things that I think would be very helpful is a much clearer connection for us to members from the actions that we're taking. What's the impact we're expecting those actions to take on the outcome measures in particular, so that we can make sure that we're not just doing things for the sake of doing, but we're really clear they're having the impact that we would want. And alongside that, what I would ask is that as a regular standing agenda item, we get an update on the progress against the outcome measures and the trends, see again how successful the plan has been.
Okay. They actually, in relation to the first point around the area of perhaps most concern, it's actually SC 1.1, which is currently is actually at agreement status in terms of the activity that's being pursued. But I think for us, recruitment and retention of our people are absolutely key, and they're central to everything in the plan. You know, if you haven't got the people, you can't deliver the plan, just as you couldn't if you hadn't got the money. So I think that would be the one I would draw attention to.
Okay. And just on the measures and
yes, I take that one on board. We do have reporting around those measures, which will come to you in the autumn. But nonetheless, I will liaise with my colleague in the data intelligence team and see what we can do to address some of those issues you picked up there. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to approve this. Sorry, Councillor McLean, apologies.
Thank you very much, Chair. On section 7, strategic objective 1.2, it talks promoting the value and the effectiveness of the safety centre. What is the safety centre? What are we talking about here?
Safety centre in Milton Keynes, Hazard Alley.
That's what I've hoped you do, because I thought I called it Hazard Alley rather than safety centre. That's fine.
So the authority continues to support through the grant.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was just steps up for us. So I think what we're proposing to do is Councillor Statutory was proposing an amendment to the plan. I know you consented that we would just bring it back. I think what we'll do is we'll take that as the structure for an amendment to the corporate plan, vote on it, and take it forward to Councillor.
That's fine.
Mr. Britton will take us through the motion proposal.
Yeah.
We can chat about it after.
Yeah.
Interesting tie.
So
Just want to please.
Move on, Brian, move on.
I'd just like to say tie colours are not a statement of
So I think in terms of the standing recommendation, we could change that to a noting, and then we could add a further substantive recommendation that which I've just put down here for a suggestion that a further review of the corporate plan be undertaken to integrate elements of the public safety plan and the environment and climate action plan in respect of climate change to be presented to the next meeting of the authority.
Yes, I think if we just add into that the HMI update on the HMI actions as well to make it complete. Councillor Statutory.
Thank you for that. Can you send me a note of what you just said? Because it'll all mean more to me then.
In the minute.
I think you'll be happy with the way it's written, so it's capturing your amendment. So on that basis, are members happy to proceed on that basis? Those in favour? Okay. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to next item, which is item 16, Quality, Diversity and Inclusion Objectives 2025. I'm going to invite Councillor Hall to introduce this, and then if he is happy to, Councillor Lambert to speak as well. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, firstly, I'd like to echo your comments regarding Councillor Lambert. He's led this portfolio with great integrity and professionalism, and I think this authority owes him a great debt for the work he's done. It's certainly a challenging time for this portfolio, and I'm up for the challenge. And moving forward, we will push the boundaries and make sure we deliver for the authority. In terms of the report, the June 2020 Fire Authority approved the overarching EDI objectives 2020 to 2025, set out against elements of your authority's core values: diversity, service to the community, improvement and people. The report is to update on progress made on EDI throughout the year and the EDI objectives. I will pass you over to Anne, Head of Human Resources and Joint EDI Lead, to present the paper. Thank you, Ash.
Sorry, Councillor Lambert, is there anything you wanted to add just before we move to?
No, well, there is, but there isn't. I'll come in, I'll make a contribution after, if that's okay, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so good morning. So I'll run you through item 16, which is on page 63 to page 90. So the first appendix I'd like to draw your attention to provides an introduction to the statutory duties outlined by the prevailing legislation and the overarching objectives that Councillor Gary Hall has spoken about. Appendix 2 on page 71 shows the proposed ED&I objectives, so that's in the table. They've been revised to continue the strong focused approach on ED&I work and alignment to the corporate plan priorities and the HMICFRS report recommendations. If you'll remember previously, there was quite a large spreadsheet with 6, 12, 18, 24 months, and the ED&I group have looked at it again and think that we need to be more focused in what we're looking at. So it's set out in there. There was one area, I wasn't planning to go through all of the proposed ED&I objectives. There was one area that I just felt that I perhaps needed to explain a little bit more that might be helpful. So the first ED&I objective, the Change 100 internship, we have been working with Leonard Cheshire. It's an external provider, and basically what they do is they support people with disabilities to come into the workplace for a period of about 3 months, and we're paying them to do that. So it's an opportunity for the individuals and for us. So we've been working very closely with them on this to start this year, and then we're planning to evaluate and to kind of move forward on that one. So in terms of the ED&I objectives, the rest of them, as Chairman said, we do need to look at the impact and what the effect of having the main objectives are on the overarching objectives. So the plan is kind of moving forward is to add another part to the table so that we can actually really say, well, actually this is the effect, so that we can see a direction of travel. Appendix 3 on page 75 illustrates the ED&I workforce data in the form of charts in comparison to the latest census data. So that's the population of Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes against the workforce. and the diversity of the workforce broken down into whole-time on-call support. Now, obviously, the census information hasn't been published as yet. So next time, we're going to be doing work on that throughout the year. But later on in the next year, then we will be able to look at it with more up-to-date information. The staff are encouraged to disclose their protected characteristics. The ED&I data is used to inform the ED&I strategies. Further work is planned in this area. The ED&I workforce data is presented to ensure it's inclusive and can be viewed by individuals who find it hard to distinguish between different colours. We have reported the current data set for a number of years and are refreshing the way we collect and present data. This will help to inform our objective setting. Now, certainly an area that we've been in collaboration with 4 other fire and rescue services on the Addressing Inequalities group, which is in the paper. The last meeting which we had last week was really centred around sharing best practice, what we're all working for, so that we can share and borrow from each other. But it was also looking at the ED&I data and what they collect, what we collect. Is there anything that we could help to support each other in terms of moving forward? So that's very much a piece of work that's ongoing. And then the final appendix, which is on page 85, Appendix 4 on page 85, provides a summary of the ED&I headlines. This year, there is a lot of information in there. It's the longest in terms of, I've been with the authority just over 4 years now, and this is the longest kind of paper that we have on the headlines. So it's showing how much work we are doing, how ambitious we are in terms of trying to move forward. So I'm really pleased to to share that and celebrate the work that's going on across the service. And then, so just taking you to the recommendations, recommended that the content of the report, the ED&I objectives for 2020 to 2025 in Appendix 1, the ED&I workforce data in Appendix 3, and the ED&I headlines in Appendix 4 be noted. And secondly, the revised ED&I objectives in Appendix 2 be approved. So has anybody got any questions on anything there? We'd have to take them.
Thank you. Any questions, comments from members? Councillor Christensen.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's the detail of the report ever grows, and it's valued. I guess it's what I wrote down in my notes is benchmarking, because particularly around the issue of ethnicity, we clearly are doing a tremendous amount of good work, but I'm not sure that's reflected in the graphs that's in this report. And I'm going to say benchmarking probably involves identifying some peers in terms of demographics in other authorities, but it would be interesting to compare our progress to other authorities as an objective measure, because I couldn't, when I read this, I couldn't help feeling that the quality of the work I've seen happening doesn't show in terms of how we're in our recruitment numbers yet. That might be a yet issue. But I'd like to understand that a bit more in context.
Okay, no, that's fine. I mean, I think in terms of comparing to other people, certainly, as I say, we're in collaboration with all of the fire and rescue services, and there is lots of work that's kind of going on. So that's certainly something that we can kind of think about looking. But in terms of the ED&I data, obviously the protected characteristics that we keep on our system for our staff, some of them we've got 100% people, but there are others that people are not comfortable with for whatever reason for submitting that information. So that's the work that we're doing ongoing to try and encourage people to get them to understand why it's so important to share, but also not just when they join the organisation, but to continue to update that information because some of the protected characteristics change. So that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darlington.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to cover a couple of points. One, obviously, Keith and myself and several other councillors were at the graduation, and it was absolutely brilliant. And there was some diversity within that, but there was a significant lack of gender diversity in that group. And in speaking to some of the current firefighters that we have that are women, about some of the challenges through. I know that we're those women that didn't make it through because of the physical force, the physical elements. We're now going to work with them now, but it seems kind of backwards should we not be working with them before the recruitment? Should we not be thinking in our objectives and action plan about how we work with people before the actual recruitment process? So that if we know there's a particular problem with women being able to build themselves up to the physical, what do you call it, the physical challenges and the tests that you lay out during that process, could we not be trying to do that beforehand? The second thing I would say is I think it's really good. We've got the outreach into communities, but we keep talking about schools being a really important recruitment place. And I don't see that anywhere reflected in our UDI objectives. And I think that's really absolutely a key area that we would like to do. And then finally, on the data capture, it would be really useful to also reflect our own EDI at the board in the graphs.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so in terms of those points, so the first one in terms of the gender diversity, so some of the things that we've been doing, we have a go days, we have them throughout the year, so we have them separate female have a go days, and what we're trying to do, 6th of February, so the last cohort that you will have seen who just came through and kind of graduated. So the last cohort, some of the people that weren't successful in the role-related testing, basically the 5th and 6th of February, we gave them all an opportunity to come back to actually try, try doing some of the role-related testing again, and then basically they were going to give them plans on what they could like improve, so they could speak to firefighters. So that is ongoing. It is something that we're trying to do. We are aware that obviously it's something that we need to help build up the confidence, and people need to go away and actually think, actually, I haven't passed that bit, but what can I do to improve? Because we're trying to recruit for behaviours, so that's why there's lots of different elements of the recruitment process. In terms of the physical, obviously there needs to be a certain amount of physical capability, but we can build on that and we can support on that. So that's why we've got all the different testing. There have been challenges. We have, for this current role-related testing, Station Commander Chris Montague, who sits in my team, actually carried out a review of all the role-related testing that we carry out in service, that others do as well, and nationally, and we did make some changes based on that to make sure that actually we had the right testing that was in place. In terms of the 43 people that we have going through for interview at the minute, throughout the recruitment process, we obviously collect the equalities data, but that is hidden throughout the process. We can't be seen, and we shouldn't be seen throughout. Now, my understanding from the team is that there's been some really positive. There's been people coming back from previous campaigns who haven't kind of moved forward, and they are getting a lot further through the process. So certainly visually, there's 2 females that are going forward in the 43. In terms of the other protected characteristics, I can't give a breakdown of all of the other diversity at the minute because we aren't able to do that. Visually, there does seem to be more diversity, but I can't give those kind of figures at the minute, and obviously it depends on how people kind of note themselves down in terms of those protected characteristics, so that's the right way to say it. So there is lots of work going on in terms of the Have a Go days and the support. I mean, I know certainly as I walked past the other day when the role-related testing was going on, and you could see the applicants going through it, like really the support between them to try and support each other and get them through those testing was really, really good. That, for me, that was really good to see. On the next point, in terms of schools, so Asif Hussain, who's our Deputy Finance and Deputy Director of Finance and Assets and a joint chair of the ED&I group, we've been working on looking at the Asian community. So that's the area that we were going to focus on to start off with. So we're going to be attending Eid in the park we think it's going to be the 10th, 11th of July. So that's about engagement. Also, our Chief Jason and as if are going into school, I don't know the date of that. It's
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay, it's coming up. So going into schools to kind of talk about what it means to work for the fire service. Now that isn't just working in the operational world. That support services staff as well. That's on call. So that's that's speaking to kind of teenagers about what that looks like. And certainly we've been, my team have been going out, led by Carly, the HR operations manager. She's been going out. We've been doing apprenticeship fairs, career fairs, all of those across the county as well. So we have been trying to get out into the community. I've had some really fantastic conversations personally with parents, with children, 11, 12-year-olds that are kind of talking, oh, I hadn't thought about the fire service. Oh, I hadn't thought about being a firefighter. Well, actually, what does that mean? And talking that through, but also looking at a range of different careers that are there as well. So there is lots of work that is going on in the background and that is being drawn together through human resources and the wider kind of workforce planning group. And the last bit on the data for fire authority that's noted, yes, so we can put that in for next time. And I think, did that answer the question?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was a particularly thorough response from us.
Thank you.
Next, I've got Councillor Lambert.
Thank you. I suppose the reason why I didn't speak at the beginning of it is because I know that Anne was going to do a really good job introducing it. But firstly, to put on record my thanks for everything that's been said about my tenure as the lead member for equalities, assurance, diversity and inclusion. It's been a fun 5 or 6 years, hard work, and I did throw myself into it a lot, to be quite honest, but I couldn't have gone anywhere with any of it if it hadn't been for the officers around the whole team. In particular, Anne, over the past 4 years, we put up a really good report and we almost second think each other as we go, oh, right, it's this, and this as you're going through it. But also to pay tribute to the EDI group who came about, I think about 4 years ago, when we were really getting to grips with EDI. And this report here and the outcomes that Anne was pointing out in the appendices, that's just a fraction of what we've achieved over this past number of years. But some things to flag up immediately is that the apprentices that we have coming in now are exceptional. They've been exceptional. We were one of the first authorities to take on apprentices, and we've tried so many different, I want to use the word marketing tricks, but also HR and the dark arts of recruitment to diversify our workforce. But our workforce was already really diverse in so many ways, and now we're able to celebrate and track that diversity. And the massive spreadsheet that Anne was referring to sometimes was unnavigable because there were so many things that we wanted. Our ambition is massive in this field, and it's a delight to see this here and to note in the previous reports the greens on the corporate plan in relation to this portfolio of health and wellbeing and how it all links together. Two things I'd really like to flag is the Tide survey. So the survey that was done to tracking our progress and what we've done, and that was really exceptional, really good result for that. The work we continue to do on the statutory reporting under the public sector equalities duty, plus equal pay and gender pay gap, all that stuff, really flags us in the right direction. It was disappointing what HMI said to us last year, and we did send back several tens of pages back in response, and we covered that in the last meeting, so I'll go over it again. But the last thing to say is working with Leonard Cheshire is exceptional. It really is exceptional, and I'm really proud that we are partnering with those to do that, because we literally are giving a hand in and up into a role and experience that many organisations yet don't do. So, and I think that's really good. So I just want to put on record my thanks to all of the team, from the Deputy Chief to Anne, and to all of the teams that worked over the years for getting us to this point. There's still a long journey to go. Just because I'm not the portfolio holder anymore doesn't mean I won't be paying attention or supporting the work that you're doing in this field. So thank you. It's not a question, it was a statement. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Councillor McLean.
Glitching the microphone. Thank you very much. The bit that Steve just mentioned about, I noted when Anne did the introduction that when the Cheshire, I was delighted to learn about that. There were probably other organisations in time we can engage with. So just if you could elucidate a bit on what roles that some of the people from the Cheshire are coming into and whereabouts it's being done, just a bit more detail.
Yeah, so basically, we've been working with them very closely. So Noma, who sits in my team, who's our HR officer, so she's been liaising with them. So we, the Marcoms team, so led under kind of Emily Hilling, they were looking to get somebody in from Leonard Cheshire, and the budget was agreed to do that over the next, I think we were going to evaluate this year, and then we were going to look at moving forward. We've certainly been speaking to Royal Berkshire, who've had quite a few people over the years. This year we've come across some concerns because the person that wanted to come into Marcoms wanted to work from home full time, and we just felt that we couldn't accommodate that. Just in terms of the skills that they were bringing in and the support that we wanted to give as well. So we are still in an ongoing relationship with kind of Leonard Cheshire and the Change 100 scheme. However, on the back of that, the conversations that I've been having with the Addressing Inequalities group, which Royal Berkshire are part of, they've been talking to us about some interns that they've been getting in from around their community. So actually, although we had hoped to have the person who was going to start for Leonard Cheshire and for Change 100, and we're still carrying on with that relationship, and we're looking for other people to come in, we have actually looked at doing it slightly different, so using the budget in a slightly different way for interns for our community as well. So that's literally hot off the press from kind of last week, and Stephen, we hadn't even spoken about that bit. So I think what we've done as the ED&I group, what we're trying to do is actually look at where can we bring somebody in. It's for a short period, it's only 3 months, but we've looked in finance, human resources, Marcoms, because it's only a very small team. Those were the areas that we were looking at. But we wanted to very much evaluate how it went with one person to start off with, so we could kind of improve and do it better kind of the next time. So does that answer it?
It certainly does. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, very briefly, Chairman, thank you. I'd like to associate myself with the praise, the gushing praise, well deserved.
Keep gushing, David, keep gushing.
For Stephen Lambert, and his contribution to this authority over 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it has been quite exemplary, and we all owe him a great debt of gratitude. So thank you for that. And also, we're very lucky to have Anne as head of human resources, because her work working with Steve, but also working independently has been fantastic. And we're making real progress, and that's measurable. Just picking a little bit on Anders' point, and this is more across the board. Everything we do now when we're benchmarking, I would like to see an emphasis on the activities in Royal Berks and in Oxfordshire, so we can see across the piece what those elements of Thames Valley are up to, so we can start to major on that, because we need to get under the skin, in the right sense of the word, of our colleagues over there. But other than that, well done. Good piece of work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, so in terms of the addressing inequalities work that we're doing, so that is Royal Berkshire, Oxfordshire, Gloucestershire and Warwickshire.
Yeah.
So at the start of every meeting that we have, we update on exactly what we're doing. So I share everything, they share everything. I steal stuff from them, they steal stuff from us. That kind of helps. We work together, and we're not trying to add more work to what we're doing. We're trying to. So actually, I can do that. But I know that they're working on interns. I know that all of the things that they're working on. So I can provide that as part of an update. That's
Good, fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Marvin.
I think I'm the youngest member of the final authority, which is fantastic for me. But just in terms of the report that we have about the reports and data, I'll just point out just quickly what Stephen said about what information we get and why my open held. That diversity and inclusion goes beyond age and gender. And ethnic background. It goes to class, socioeconomic background, sexual preference, disability, including in mental health. And I don't see any of that here, for instance. So whether that is recorded, if it is recorded, it would be helpful to put in the report that comes to this committee as well, because I understand if you're looking at the chairman's announcements and some of this stuff, we're going out to people. It matters not just around whether you're talking to people to try and get them into the service, but the accent in which you talk to people. So is that organisation something that represents me, but also are those people the same background as me? And having, not to put too fine a point on it, somebody from this sort of background in the past, having white middle class people talk to you in a way that doesn't necessarily represent your community, even though it's well-meaning, isn't always the way to get people into the authority. I'd like to see some of that data there. And what I would also like to say is of the 172 applicants, so this is all great, but those 172 applicants that applied for hotel firefighters, what's the breakdown, and then what do we end up with? Because it's great if those 172 applicants represent all elements of the community, but then if we end up with 4 white men and 1 Asian man, it's still not representative of the community. So some of that background, and hopefully we've collected that data on those 172 people, and then we'll see the outcome as well, because all of this is a bit moot if we are not moving the dial on the authority at the end of the day.
Okay, so I think that those are well-made points. What I'd suggest is that if Gary, Councillor Hall, works with Anne just to look at all of the data that's collected and how we can present it in what way, but I think that the point on the recruitment in particular is well made. Sorry, Councillor Statutory.
Yeah, just concur with what Councillor Mullin said and concur with members. One thing I wonder, and all the thanks and wishing Gary all the best luck in the will. The thing that I wonder whether we're missing here, and I've observed, sometimes observing things you learn a lot about role models, about people who you can represent, who comes from your background, your gender, your whatever. And I think that maybe we need to look in ourselves and see if we've got any people who could be role models, because it's, if you look at the forces and the way they recruit, and you look at they seem to be very successful in getting people from all sorts of backgrounds into the military forces, which is a similar type of job to what we're doing. It's a public service job. And I think we need to see what they're doing, why they succeed, and why we're not succeeding in breaching that gender problem of diversity. I'm not saying nobody's not working very hard, because they clearly are. So could we just go away and look and see if we've got anyone within our authority here, a role model? I say this because I watched difference it made to young women when a international women's rugby player came to talk to them about rugby, and had a teacher who was a ex-international rugby player. Consequently, when I went to the rugby club the next time, there was as many lady rugby players at the rugby club as there were men. And that shows to me that having a role model in the community, someone people focus around who's got somebody who respects, does have a positive impact. And I'm sure we've got somebody in the authority to do that. I wouldn't know all the members of staff. I hope you will learn to know them. We should approach it in that way.
Great, thank you, Councillor Statutory. So I think just on role models, I think there's some good examples from school visits in particular. I'm just conscious of time, so I'm just going to move us on. But some good examples from school visits, but I think the role model is certainly a good thing. So just a couple of final comments from me before we move forward. So you can't help but be impressed by the sheer volume of activity that's underway, and I think the authority should note that. I think we've talked before about the impact bits. I think the benchmarking is a really strong, important point, and very pleased to see the focus on it. So we're being asked to firstly note the report, but we're being asked to approve the revised EDI objectives for 22-23. Members happy to approve those objectives? Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you, Anne, for the important thorough questions as well, thorough answers to questions as well. Next, moving on to item 17, which is the Home Office consultation on reforming our fire and rescue service. Now, I know members received a copy of the white paper, I think on the 18th of May, when it was issued. I asked for this to be tabled because clearly as an authority we need to prepare a response by the end of July. You'll see that in this paper we're being asked to note the content of the white paper and agree the formation of a working group comprising of the group leaders, the vice chairman and lead members in order to formulate responses which will be tabled at the executive on the 13th of July. So that's the context of the report. Graham, is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chairman. Not really, but only just by way of an update on a couple of points. In respect of the duty to collaborate, which is mentioned on page 93 of my cover report, just to let members know that since writing the report, there has now been a date arranged for Stuart Galdock and I to meet with the Office of Police and Crime Commissioner's Head of Governance and also its Chief Executive next week to liaise on areas of shared interest arising from the white paper. And secondly, that to mention that if members agree the recommendation to form a working group, I will follow up with the chairman and the chief file officer on how best to facilitate a workshop and or a document share facility for member and officer inputs into the consultation responses.
Thank you. Any comments from members? Councillor Darlington.
So I just wanted to put on, we had a bit of discussion on this, but this is really, now having seen the white paper, this is actually really worrying. We know how badly Milton Keynes is serviced by TVP currently, because it's on that outreach there, because it's political, whatever reason you want to put forward for it. But already at a weekend, last weekend with other LGA leaders, somebody was telling me about how where they were already starting to integrate, they were asking firefighters to take PCSO powers and to dilute the actual firefighters' activities in terms of actually getting them to fill in for all the cut police numbers and the cut police PCSO numbers, and actually taking them away from the really important duties, as the HMIFRS report pointed out, of actually going out into the community to prevent fires. So great, they'll be able to continue to do the emergency stuff, but the other time that they might have spent doing the prevention, which, as you know, the report said we absolutely needed to improve on, will actually be diluted into backing up the police force with PCSO powers. I think that is absolutely disastrous. I really think, I mean, from my perspective, this is just absolutely not the way to go. And it will provide a much worse service for our residents at a time when we've really been able to reduce the number of deaths from fires significantly, and our fire authority is already being asked to take those additional roles to do with flooding and climate change and COVID response and others. So that's my comment on this paper.
Great. So I'm conscious this is about establishing a working group, so we should make sure that all these comments are captured and move forward. But sorry, are captured to make sure they're fed into the working group discussion. Councillor Statutory.
Yeah, apologise, Chairman, it's very disappointing report.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of that.
Apologise, Chairman, it's a very disappointing report. And one of the best ways in society to achieve something is to ask whether you want to do it, not to ask whether you should do it. The report mixes, which is disappointing. You all know this. Yesterday we were all watching with feelings about Lambert Tower. The report brings that into the front of it, conflates that issue with this issue about having a police and crime commissioner to charge with. I don't see that as a positive. It also conflates the roles of our firefighters. If ever been a document had been produced to cause as much disruption and disquiet and concerns amongst the thinking individuals, this is one. This has done it. I asked a simple question round that. How has this been presented to the union? Has the union responded to it? Will we be consulting our workforce about this, even if they're not in the union? Because these are big changes. The whole way that you work, if you're going to succeed in anything, the way that you do is you ask whether you want to do it, and then you take the people with you on it. This is a sort of presenting what we're going to do, and we can only see that forcing on someone or indicating that you're going to do it through legislation in the way you are is authoritarian, and I don't think it's going to produce the goods. And I echo the concerns about. I congratulate the fire authority at Buckinghamshire for the work they've done to improve safety. I congratulate the staff for the way they do it. I don't think this is a wrecking ball and not an underarm bowl. It's an overarm car.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Osprey. Just for clarity, to use the word of the day, I think you're referring to the white paper rather than the report itself. So just so we're really clear, the white paper is, I think, what you're challenging. In the report, we have outlined that colleagues across the fire service have had their attention drawn to the white paper and encouraged to respond. And it's a consultation document, so the Fire Brigade Union and other interested parties are perfectly able to respond to the report. This is about us as a fire authority, how we respond, and the vehicle by which we do that, which is the working group which is going. Councillor Christensen.
Thank you. I'll take point 1.2 in reverse order. Support point 2, in terms of establishment of the working group. In terms of item 1, noting the white paper, similar things to what's already been said. It's a god awful paper. Just take to question 1 on page 12. To what extent do you agree or disagree that fire and rescue services should have the flexibility to deploy resources to help? I don't ignore read it. We've already demonstrated we do that really well in terms of the vaccine support that we've given that during the COVID period. But that's an open-ended question. Support from what? You know, if you say you strongly agree, well, what would we be strongly agreeing to? So I would very much caution the group that responds to this to be very careful about how we phrase our responses, because this is just not a paper set out to actually get legitimate views, in my opinion. It's a poor piece of work by government.
Thank you. Councillor Marlow.
In terms of the white paper, it's a bit incoherent, but that's not responsibility of the chair or anybody on this authority. Just on the recommendation, I would suggest maybe adding one, because I've spoken to the leaders and directly elected mayor in Bedfordshire and also Northamptonshire. I know there's equal concern about the content of the paper, and in Oxfordshire as well. You probably have a thought about what is occurring in Buckinghamshire, and therefore I'll possibly add a recommendation of about talking to our neighbouring authorities as well as part of that working group process, that we could, if we're going to submit a response, if any coordination is possible, that would be good. Again, just to put on record that I think the only driving principle that an individual being accountable or an individual and accountability are not the same thing. So unless it becomes a single TVP fire authority, the police and crime commissioner would not. In fact, they would be less accountable to the people of Buckinghamshire or Milton Keynes for changes that are made in Oxfordshire and vice versa. Because how can, if the change is made in Oxfordshire, how could the people of Oxfordshire hold somebody accountable when people of Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes and Berkshire then have a say? They're not accountable, and I do worry about the operational independence of chief fire officers and creating a little bit of potential of conflict, but also a potential of effectively not being accountable. So I've recently been discussing with the police and crime commissioner, police numbers in Milton Keynes, and we're told where police numbers are a matter for the chief constable. Chief constable will say, well, strategy and where resources go are a matter for the police and crime commissioner. Well, that level of sort of ability to pass the buck between one another is not helpful and is not accountable. So we'll discuss these obviously within that working group. I just want to put that on the record in public, but move that change the recommendations that we work with neighbouring authorities as well on our response.
Yes, so thank you for that. If you're happy, so I think as a matter of course, we're obviously talking both through the collaboration group and with others, and I know that the chief fire officer is also talking to neighbouring areas. So we'll sort of take that as an absolute given that we will do that. You know, clearly, I think what's important is that we get our response right, and I think whether I share or don't share your view about the white paper, which I won't comment on. What matters is we put the best response forward that's right for Buckinghamshire and the city of Milton Keynes. So on that basis, can I get? Sorry, did I miss your hand, Councillor? Oh, sorry, I apologise, Councillor Lambert.
So this is something that we have discussed backwards and forwards over a long time, actually, reform of governance, in particular fire authorities, and still looking at page 110, page 10 of that, and we're laid it out. It is immensely opaque about where we sit in this structure. It's almost like they've got, oh, we forgot. We have Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes Fire Authority, we have 2 unitary authorities. The Thames Valley is 3 authorities, 4 authorities, Royal Bucks, Buckinghamshire. Go on, check it. Sorry, Chief.
There are 3 sort of fire and rescue service in Oxfordshire is in the county,
yeah.
A combined fire authority in Buckinghamshire, Milton Keynes, and a combined fire authority in Berkshire.
So we're entirely like falling through the gaps in this point, and it makes responding to this particularly difficult because we happen to put our head above the parapet and go, oh, you forgot about us. Which is kind of strange considering the amount of visits we've had for ministers and so forth over the years. So I'm wondering, obviously we'll take part in the future discussions and response, but This is so far, unless the chair has an alternative view and his group suddenly changed their mind about what their previous thoughts were, moving towards this kind of model, it has always been thought not the right thing for this authority, politically wise. We've often shared the same views on that, so interested if that changes. But equally, our current police and crime commissioner has made it abundantly clear that he does not want to take on fire and rescue services. So I'd be interested also when we are talking to other authorities, as Councillor Marner pointed out, that we also look to talk to the police and crime commissioner again as part of that process, so that we don't end up well, so one, we have another restatement of his intention, but secondly, that we as an authority have a very clear view about what his intention is and able to respond to that as part of this consultation.
Okay, thank you. I should just put records because I had conversations with the Police and Crime Commissioner, and I know from having sat on the Police and Crime panel as well, his view has not been that he doesn't want it. It's that he's not campaigning for it, not asking for it. But if the change so happens, he'll happily integrate it in. So I think it's important to present his position. He hasn't said he doesn't want it. The group leaders, vice chairman, and lead members can factor in all of those points if we're happy to establish groups. Can I ask members happy to establish that working group for the white paper?
Yeah.
Agreed. Thank you. Right, we move on to item 18, which is the breathing apparatus project progress update. Welcome to Group Commander Adam Birch and Station Commander Dave Tubbs. I think you can take as read that we've read the excellent presentation, so thank you for that. And I see you've got some kit with you as well, so we'll hand over to you for the next bit.
Brilliant, thank you. That's going to connect. So I'll introduce ourselves shortly. So thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning, isn't it? Good morning, officers and officers. As soon as that connects, we'll let you know. But we're not going to go through slide by slide for the presentation, but what we have done is condense the presentation down into 3 or 4 succinct slides, just so that we can give you a really good level of detail over where we've got to so far, what we've achieved today, and where we're looking to go to, and what some of the key aims are we're trying to achieve. And if at any point anybody does want to have any further information or details regarding the project, we are available later today and will be available at any point to have a follow-up meeting. So I will connect this in a second, but first of all, obviously present myself. I am Group Commander Adam Birch. I am the Group Commander of the technical team, and I am the project lead for this collaborative project, introducing the breathing apparatus set across the Thames Valley. But more importantly, however, this is Station Commander Dave Tubbs, who works in my team. He's the real driving force behind sort of coordinating all the activity across Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service, Oxfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, and our Rover Fire and Rescue Service, in order to deliver this collaborative project across the region, working with, which importantly is going to be a real key enabler for the wider programme of operational alignment, which hopefully we'll cover shortly. So I will connect these slides. Apologies, we are having a couple of connectivity issues. For those dialing in remotely as well, obviously you will have access in the agenda to the slides. None of the information has changed. We just condensed it down just to make it a little bit more succinct. I do appreciate there's quite a packed agenda, and it's a very warm day. Believe me, we do know that. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Station Commander Dave Tubbs.
Lovely, thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Chair, members, and thanks for your time this morning. Very briefly go through some of the highlight points that are contained in that presentation. Brought some of the equipment with us as well. I'll go through some of the sort of main areas and the highlights of the equipment that we're going to deliver across the Thames Valley as well. So, on an initial perspective, the aim of it, the project will align and standardise the BA breathing apparatus equipment and the ancillary equipment within that as well across, as I said, Buckinghamshire, Oxfordshire and Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Services, to mean we have an aligned specification of equipment across the Thames Valley area. Under a joint collaborative contract, the successful project delivery, this is a key enabler to achieving full operational alignment across the Thames Valley as well. This project serves as a precursor to the operational alignment aspects which are identified within the work streams that we're doing in the service and across the Thames Valley as well. Once we've aligned that equipment, we can then align all our operational procedures, our training that backs that up, to mean that all firefighters in the Thames Valley area have the same equipment within terms of breathing apparatus. Some of the key achievements to date, So we've got the new equipment contract awarded, providing better management of contamination, increasing firefighter safety both during and post incident. Do this. Table now, we can start to go through a few sort of key areas of it. This is so within the initial presentation that you all provided a copy of. There were some more the technical aspects of it and the terminology within it. So this is the new Inspire Incurve E VA set. So in terms of some of the points here about contamination and management of that, a reduction in terms of textile use across the frame and harness of the VA set, more rubberized version, so it will mean that less contaminants build up for our firefighters, increasing their safety during the incident, but also post-incident, the ease of stripping and cleaning these sets is far, far greater. So again, post-incident, we can get them to a far, far safer position a lot quicker as well. It's also within firefighter safety, so the Incurve E, so it's an electronic set. So we currently have a telemetry enabled, telemetry being an electronic data link between the VA set and an entry control board. New example we've got here as well. So it's a wireless link between the two of them, meaning that we've got real-time monitoring of our VA wearers through themselves, through electronic units on the VA sets, which then, as I said, sends a live signal to our VA boards as well. These are the boards that are operated by a qualified firefighter outside of the incident. So, outside, for example, outside of the building, and they will manage the teams within it as well. They get real-time monitoring of the air that they currently got left, their air consumption, denoting how hard the firefighters are working inside the building as well. Any relevant safety alarm that's sent backwards and forwards, it enables two-way communication between the VA sets and the VA board as well. And also, when we look at logging of that information as well, so when we look at health monitoring during incidents and post-incident as well, and any investigations that may need to be done, any information that needs to be drawn down from the boards and the sets post-incident as well, it enables that. That's enabled where we currently are, is all written, and there's some identifiable information in terms of the VA set that's not personal to a wearer. With the new technology that they're going to have, every VA wearing member of staff will be issued one of these fobs. That enables them to log on to the VA set before they carry out their checks in the morning. We make sure that everything is attributed to a wearer. That is then logged in with the board as well, so the person monitoring it outside can see which wearer we've got as well. The VA project itself links to so many other sort of work streams where we look at things like communications within the Grenfell phase 1 outcomes, when we look at the collaboration work and everything else that goes with it as well. And then when we look at other stuff in terms of health monitoring for members of staff, it sort of features fairly heavily in terms of all that and brings real advantages to it as well. Successful practical trials for operational staff. So these were carried out what doesn't seem like a year ago, but was now a year ago at Fire Service College. We carried out practical trials in terms of all the suppliers who were bidding for the contract. And we took the equipment down there, carried out equipment trials on what was the hottest week of the year as well. Very strenuous for our team. 9 volunteers from across the 3 services, looking at across the representative of the workforce between gender, build, height, and that sort of thing as well, and duty systems as well, both whole-time and on-call staff. To make sure we had a representative view on the equipment that was being done. This was all scored. Every exercise was stored by the members of staff and different bits of kit. That was all fed in, and fortunately for us, is the way the tender process worked out without going into all the detail of it. The most favourable item of equipment is the one that actually won the contract as well. So in terms of what our staff wanted and what they favoured in terms of practical trials and what went through. This was the collaborative procurement process was completed and resulting in significant efficiency savings. When we look at cost per unit reductions, we've seen due to the collaborative purchase that we've had throughout the Thames Valley, we've had cost per unit reductions, so 65% on our face masks, which is this part of the VA set. Due to that, we've been able to again improve our firefighter safety in terms of issuing these on a personal basis. Currently, these are shared, cleaned in between uses, but we're now going to issue these to every member of staff that wears BA, so they'll have their own mask that they do and take responsibility for themselves.
In a range of different sizes as well.
Yes, absolutely. With these, we see a far greater range of sizing to be able to be used than our previous supplier. And all staff are tested in line with HSE requirements of port count face fitting testing, which is where they're tested to make sure they get an adequate seal, and the greater range of sizes allows us to do far, far better as well. And some other ones up there. So 60% for our cylinder. So the cylinder we're working on, there's a slight update to what you received in your packs as well. We've now agreed to use the new technology of cylinders as well. So these have been implemented across the Thames Valley. It's a non-limited life cylinder. Currently, ones on offer, generally they range between 10 and 15 years. The new technology means that it's non-limited life. As long as it passes its 5-yearly test, it will continue moving. The improvement we see with that, apart from the fact that there's no additional cost to us, supplier, is the fact that we see a reduction in weight as well. We see about half a kilo to our current cylinders. So again, we managed to get another half a kilo off, which in terms of the total set, when we look at the sort of about 2 kilos, possibly 2.5 with the new cylinder that we've got as well. In terms of the reduction in weight, far, far better. Tied in with the improved ergonomics of the set and the flexibility of how it's worn by the wearers as well, serves far, far better to our operational staff. When we look at a diverse workforce and ageing workforce as well, much, much better in terms of the long run for that. The equipment specification will be aligned across the Thames Valley. It is now mentioned about personal face masks as well. And the joint Thames Valley training team were established to provide efficiency and resilience in the line training delivery. So we have had an identified training team. They are our current BA instructors. And we've got one from each service that have worked out a delivery schedule. That delivery schedule actually starts today in Royal Berkshire. So as of 9 o'clock this morning, so there'll be a couple of hours into it now, they start their first delivery session within Royal Berkshire. That will then cycle through the entirety of Royal Berkshire, move into Oxfordshire, and then move into Buckinghamshire after that as well. Bring us quite nicely onto the timeline. So I've mentioned about the training delivery. We will start to see equipment deliveries within Buckinghamshire moving into our December training rollout. So we will get initial delivery for training equipment, and we will then receive our full allocation early next year to go live by the end of March 20. And then following that go live will be the third service to go live. That will then again allow that precursor for the full operational alignment from there up towards what is identified as October 23 currently. And there'll be a full project review following that as well to look at lessons learned, what we've done well, what we haven't, and how we can share that experience with other fire and rescue services as well from a collaborative perspective.
Shall I summarise here then? Yeah. So just to summarise, and these are some of the key benefits that we've seen here, and I'll just summarise now is that obviously we've broken down into key categories. Firefighter safety is a key one. Obviously, you mentioned a number of different sort of examples of how we're going to, through modern technology, through a change of material makeup, etc., and the ability to purchase personal face masks. We're now going to improve firefighter safety both pre, during, and post incident, which is really, really important. The operational alignment piece is going to be really, really key for us moving forward. We've got a real focus throughout this project, and we continue to regarding quality, diversity, and inclusion. We mentioned a number of things in terms of weight reduction, making sure that it's suitable for a range of different individuals, personal face masks of different shapes and statures, etc. And obviously with the communications, we haven't touched upon that, but we're going to ensure that we bring forward the more modern technology, the Bluetooth technology across the region, ensuring that we try and help to address some of the key recommendations that came out of Brentford, making sure we introduce the most robust communication methods possible to our firefighters when they're in that risk critical environment. But finally, just to kind of cap this off, is the finance and procurement. So most importantly, that one of the big achievements that we received through this, through going through a collaborative sort of procurement process, is that if we were to go off the framework or just to go individually, actually by coming together and by working across the region, the sort of indicative costs against the framework is a 1.1 million reduction in indicative costs. So which is a huge achievement really for us, and it's given us the opportunity really to scope out and look at some of the other additional benefits that we can introduce. So on that as well, I've got to thank all the team that are involved. Dave, you're really key in this, but also across the region, there's a number of people and individuals across training teams, health and safety, a range of different departments that are putting this together, which is really important. But especially throughout the procurement process, Rhonda Smith's doing excellent as well, our procurement manager. So just need to mention that she is really key to this. Just to summarise as well, this is a key milestone in our collaboration sort of programme in order to ensure that we align our equipment policy and guidance across the Thames Valley, which will improve firefighter safety through the introduction of this new equipment, which in hand will then enhance the service that we offer to the public and improve the public safety. I'm conscious of time, but more than happy to answer any questions you may have on the equipment of the programme.
Thank you. Excellent. Councillor Chapel.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Isn't it good to see a 21st century breathing apparatus? I was in the first year of the CV Gorman back in 78, and just one from optifocal. It's all electric now, and you can speaks with the headset as well that's really outside. Has it incorporated radiation, or do you still need to wear a dust?
So in terms of protective equipment for that, we'd still advocate the use of dosimeters, personal dosimeters for our staff as well. So we don't have radiation detection within.
Right, I just want to know if it was really up there.
Who knows what the future will bring?
Okay, thank you. Well done.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a win-win and a no-brainer to me. It looks like a, a good piece of work. My thought is just on the existing kit, which, assuming it's going to be fully serviceable when it's retired, is what we do with it. Do we, give it away to a third country such as Ukraine, where it can have a second life?
That's what we've identified through the supply. The supply will come and collect the equipment and then go out through various charities like Fire Aid or Fire Engine and go out through. Okay, good.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It's excellent that we are being kept fully abreast of all the latest technologies, and I really do appreciate that. You did, of course, remind us on several occasions during the presentation that this is indeed the 5th anniversary of the tragedy at Grenfell. And I know I speak for everybody in this room that when I say that obviously our thoughts are with the families still who live with this tragedy every day, and also of course with the firefighters for whom the memories of this don't diminish. And so I think we just need to somehow record that. But thank you for the presentation, absolutely fascinating. And I do value these presentations from your colleagues on an occasional basis. It keeps us a little bit in touch. And I welcome Councillor Chapel's comments as well, which take us back to the 1970s, where I was at my prime.
Good. Thank you. Councillor McLean.
Is that your primary school? Thank you, Chair. Thank you to Alan and Dave. And I've been following this project since it started, and it's one of the best I've come across. But I am really proud that you're putting health and safety at the forefront, and health and well-being as well, along with the efficiencies that you talked about in ways which will be great for people. And I gather from talking to you previously that it's likely they'll be able to stay longer as an incident because of the up-to-date technology, the information that's being fed back to the board and the people controlling it. So thank you very much, and we look forward to October 23 when we get your report on the rollout.
Thank you very much. And yeah, that's a really important note. And actually, Ali Quainton, who feeds into the health and safety and wellbeing committee, is the lead health and safety rep for the project as well. So she's been really
No wonder you're on your toes then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Jason.
Just to make the point, actually, this is the final step in terms of collaboration. We have a Thames Valley Fire Control. We buy the same fire engines, we have the same equipment, and now we'll have the same breathing apparatus set right across the Thames Valley Fire and Rescue Services. And regardless of how the debate goes in terms of how fire and rescue services are governed in relation to the white paper, I think the bit for me is how we continue to collaborate and make their next steps, which enables our staff and staff from Oxfordshire and Royal Berkshire to be able to train together, to be able to attend incidents together, and all of them things. That should never ever stop in any context of any consultation. But like I said, it's been a long journey, but at last we are going to align. Next step is operational procedures and combined training would be my recommendations to move on. Now we've got the right things in the right places for the benefit of all.
Thank you. Councillor Sushbury.
Well, firstly, I share with David, journalist and bright words today, and I also share with Gary's about the issues of equipment. I've heard Gary say similar things before. But I am encouraged that we are moving past the 1970s, referring to my colleague over there, who remembers it very well, even though the economy might reflect the 1970s, we are now moving forward in date, if not in economics. I do thank the group command and station command for their efforts in this. The obvious way you can approach this collaboratively across the different authorities, which rather questions why we need the white paper at all. But as we can clearly, as demonstrated by the professionals in the fighter, are able to do all what the white paper wants to do without meddling from a police constable or chief constable. But I'm thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing it out on it being used. And I realise it's going to improve the safety of our firefighters, and therefore will improve the safety of the community. I can thank you both for everything.
Thank you. So just one sort of point of clarification and some final comments from me. So just for the record, I think it's worth noting the reason we're the last to get the new kit is because our kit is the last to age. Is that right?
Yes, so it falls in line with the current, all three services on different contracts. So we just needed to assure the programme was in line with making sure that we could agree across the region that it's the most sensible approach for it.
Good, thank you. So thank you for that, was excellent. And on behalf of the authority, thanks to everybody that's been involved in the project, both of you and the people that you outlined. Really, really impressive, both the safety and then the cost savings as well that you delivered through. So thank you. So we're asked to note the report. Happy to note the report. Agreed. Thank you very much. So we're moving on to item number 19, exclusion of public and press. And Dr. Grant, read the statutory wording.
Thank you, Chairman. The recommendation is as follows: that the public and press representatives be excluded from the meeting by virtue of paragraph 1, part 12A, the local government act 122, and report contains information relating to an individual. Paragraph 3 of part 1, section 12A, local government act 122, as report contains information relating to financial and business affairs of the person, including those of the authority. And on these grounds, it is considered the need to keep information exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing information. That's the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I have agreement that we exclude?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
There we go.
Thank you. Welcome back to the public session. I'm going to read the recommendations for the paper on the future senior management team succession plan, and then we'll move to a vote, members. So it's recommended that, firstly, an interim departure from Deputy Chief Fire Officer succession plan in Appendix C until no later than 10th of November 2024 be approved. Secondly, the mitigation measure in the Chief Fire Officer succession plan, Appendix C of re-engagement be adopted. Thirdly, that an offer of employment to the incumbent CFO be approved, subject to the following. Firstly, a fixed-term contract to terminate no later than the 1st of November 2024, unless terminated by either side on the giving of 3 months' notice. And secondly, a per annum starting salary of 153,717. B, with other terms and conditions in accordance with the CFO's current entitlements and obligations. Fourthly, the current DCFO's fixed-term contract is extended to expire no later than the 10th of November 2024. And fifth, that a paper be submitted to the authority before the 31st of December 2023 to consider all options open to the authority in respect of the roles of both CFO and DCFO and the senior management team. Can I ask that members in favour of those recommendations raise their hands? I believe that's universally carried. Thank you. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you, everyone.